Welcome to our program, Fostering Innovation and Competitiveness in the Blue Economy. I'm Andrew Gall, and I'm pleased to be hosting this with the support of Frontier IP and Emporia4KT. During the program, we had a great panel of speakers, and we had discussions where the participants joined in, discussing their particular focus on building ventures, spin-outs of technology, and growing sustainable ventures in the blue economy. So we had the breakout discussion group. All the participants joined the panel and the facilitator experts. And we now have the feedback from each of those discussion groups. Neil, would you like to go ahead, please?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing that just sort of we picked up on was the real need for communication. And actually there was a live example with, obviously we had CDL and UN speaking, Mary speaking, and Austin speaking. And the fact that two of the ventures, two of them had looked at SPORE, but were unaware of each other's participation was really interesting to us, because here are people in an ecosystem and yet they're not necessarily connected. And then in the discussion, we were discussing one of Paul's project. This is seaweed, it's called, which we get the seaweed space. And here we had an example of two things cropped up. One was that Sarah was flagging that it would have been useful to be aware of when she was meeting a major corporate about his kind of technology that would fit for you. So there's, again, just as communication, people can't scale things they're not aware of. If she'd have known about it, she probably could have given them a plug, and probably that would have been good for her and good for them. And then separately, while we were discussing people who might help, it turned out that someone that Sarah knows we're also involved in happens to be one of our shareholders. So for me, that takeaway was just the more we can do of things like this to connect and communicate, the more that, and especially around things that are addressing social themes, and people are willing to help, but they can't help what they don't know about. So the communication was clearly super important. I think we picked up that it was first of all key that you have a commercial focus about success, and then you'll meet your social goals. You can't do it the other way around. You can't have something that is socially well-meaning, but doesn't make economic sense. So that was certainly a theme that we felt was important. Sarah shared her experience with CDL responding to the COVID challenges that cropped up and how the organization scaled to do that. And that led on to a bit of a discussion around, it's really good to have advisors around you who've done the thing that they're giving you advice on. They used to have, they've been through the process of scaling their organizations and such like. Certainly we focus a lot on that in Frontier. I know CDL do as well. I was just relaying that, talking to VCs, you know, broadly you can break it down into people. And when things are very early, I think Sarah was saying it's mainly people, is what they're looking for. The technology has to be there, of course, but then it's a timing question of product market fit. And, you know, certainly CDL programs help with that. We do as well, but it's not enough to say you've got a good technology, but why is it going to work at scale, and why now? And what are the financial metrics financial metrics and how you communicate? And then the final point I just want to bring up, which is sort of linked to all of those really, is culture is super important. So having honesty with yourselves and others and engaging when you're challenged, and trying to work out why things won't work as well as why they will, and being honest with yourself. So don't, you know, you've got to be on one hand a huge enthusiast for what you're doing, but on the other hand, don't be a true believer to the exclusion of evidence. You've got to make sure that you really are focusing on what the challenges are, and certainly our experience is worrying more about what goes wrong than necessarily just what goes right, because it's the things that go wrong that really really can kill you. So that's probably enough from me, but that's a quick canter through on the key topics that we saw that hopefully are useful to others to consider.
Thank you, Neil. It's interesting. Your topic's about technology transfer, but it's all about people, isn't it? Connections, being open to listening, and sort of things like that. And your key real points, people in the center of that.
Well, I'll relay one final point, which wasn't in our session, but I was talking to a very well-known leading VC, and he was flagging that he'd scanned 100 things that he'd done, and only one had failed because of the technology. That doesn't mean he's 99% successful. It means that basically, you know, the common cause of failure is people, not the technology, even in technology ventures.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. If anybody's got any other comments or questions, and that, please put them into the chat, and that we can continue the discussion in the chat. So thanks so much, Neil. Over to Alice now, who was discussing managing the energy mix transition.
Absolutely, and we've had a really good talk between us about corporate government roles. Actually, Laurence, do you wanna give the feedback of the session?
Sure. Yeah, we had a really wonderful discussion, and the managing the energy transition, energy mix transition is really a difficult topic at this point in time, because we see industry going in all different directions with different new fuels, biofuel, hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, electrification, and things like that. And we see like a lot of maybe duplication of infrastructure, and maybe even duplication of effort in different countries. And we are saying that from the decarbonization perspective, this may be counterproductive when we are running short of time. We do see that both government and venture capital and industry has a role to play. For example, government can have more forums with different stakeholders, so they can share knowledge, exchange best practices, and decide on narrowing down where to best put limited resources, and maybe have joint industry projects, and then adapt to local conditions. We also see venture capital has a role to play, because venture capital is not bound by geographical location. They just want to see what's the best technological outcome. So perhaps government can work together to fund lower TRL, and venture capital can fund a scale up of technologies from there on. Another hindering aspect is the regulations and standards. They are normally like behind innovation, and without a clear regulational framework, investors may be hesitant to invest, and also how to regulate to support and how not to regulate to hinder. So I think that's the major points. Alice, feel free to jump in if I miss anything.
That was very, very well covered, so I have nothing to add. Thank you so much, and thanks for the discussion. It was really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you. So moving on to Noshua Watson and your group, measuring impact of the venture alongside financial metrics. Insights from your group, Noshua?
So I think my assumption upon discussing the topic was that we were going to talk about how to measure impact, ex post, after the fact. But where our discussion ended up going was actually ahead of time, when you're looking at, whether it's a business or a project, how do you identify what has the true potential for impact, ahead of time, ex ante, and how, how do you choose the best projects in a sense, to devote your time, your energy, your resources, and so on. And so something that was mentioned is that actually, you want to look at what's transformative, what's replicable, what's scalable, but also, for example, with something that's consumer oriented, what's really affordable, where are you going to get the most uptake? And so, that I think that those are some good ways of thinking about return on investment in different ways. We also discussed some areas that are, say, neglected or get less attention. So, for example, when you look at high impact projects or projects that are seen as being high impact, you hear a lot about materials innovation projects. But for example, policy and programmatic innovations get neglected. because you don't necessarily have the financial return on investment. And so one example that Mary gave was in sustainable fisheries and marine pollution. You have a lot of work, important work that needs to be done and is being done around extended producer responsibility laws. So she mentioned a social initiative in Costa Rica where they are gathering petition signatures and doing a peace treaty with the ocean. And the president is actually going to reference it in, in the legislative session. But these are the kinds of initiatives that need to be replicated in scale. They're obviously transformative, but because the direct financial return on investment isn't as apparent, these sorts of projects get less attention, less funding, despite their impact potential. But getting to sort of the after the fact measurement and structuring that, I think one issue that comes up is, who's your audience? A lot of funders say, show us your impact, but, you can have lots and lots of metrics, but the question is, not just, okay, measuring it, but what's most appealing to them? What can you sell? What gets headlines? So some of the, approaches that we discussed to address some of these issues were, for example, not only just focusing on the SDGs themselves in terms of impact, but there are opportunities if you actually drill down into the SDG targets. Many people are familiar with the SDG goals themselves, but there are actually targets attached to each of the SDGs as well. And those might be, sources of action. With respect to the areas that don't necessarily receive as much attention and funding, more alternative and blended financing for projects, high impact potential projects could be a solution. And then we also discussed, some other areas that around related to oceans that could use more attention, such as nature-based solutions like biomimicry and also ecosystem restoration.
Good. Thank you very much. I think you raised a good point right at the start there about the trying to come up with some sort of impact figures before the venture has actually started. And I'm certainly seeing that now in the investment environment. It's difficult enough to come up with the business plan and sales figures and the hard sort of financial figures, which are, visionary, putting it mildly. Never mind about the fact that we think we're going to save the world with some of these ventures. I think it is an important factor, which is going to come for the startups, the finances and the corporates of measuring their impact as well as their financial side of things. So thank you, Noshua, and the group that discussed that. Sophia, effective transition from research to startup ventures. What were the insights from your discussion?
I would request the support from Andrew Johnson, who was taking the notes from this very interesting session. So Andrew,
happy to pick it up. I think Sophia defined the problem is, there is a gap between sort of technologies, being developed in the lab and getting them to market. And, there are any numbers of ways to fill that gap through facilitators, mentors, funding and so on. So she defines the broad problem. Alexandra then came in and said, well, one of the problems is that researchers do not want to be entrepreneurs. They want to be academics. How can you bring them on board with you? And there was a very good point made by Don, who said, well, they have to really want to do it. And I think this goes back to earlier points about communication and so on, but also about supporting them. And Don, effectively, I think we all agree it's about understanding the technology, getting it properly validated, understanding the scalability challenges, and then putting all the right teams in place around that to support them. I think Don took teams of academics and entrepreneurs to be fairly fluid. He made the point that academics have to realise they sometimes have to give up more of their ideas than they might like to reflect the investment made by entrepreneurs or venture capitalists or whoever, in terms of not just the financial investments they're making, but also the investments they're making in terms of their time and expertise as well. So once again, that's coming back to the communication problem. So it's about getting the right teams in place at the right time to support the right kinds of technology. I think we all concluded by, basically saying, none of this is actually easy either. I mean, I think Don cited a friend of his, a venture capitalist, who basically expects about 1 in 10,000 of the ideas he actually looked at to be successful. And even when something's on the cusp of success, things can still happen which need to be addressed, which can be aggravating and frustrating, but ultimately shows that what you're doing is worthwhile and also has high barriers to entry. So when it is successful, it's going to be really difficult for people to replicate.
Excellent.
Sophia, do you have anything to add to that?
Awesome, Andrew. Thank you very much. And thank you for all that attended this discussion.
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks very much there, Sophia, Andrew, and the ones who are involved in that group. Sara, and supporting ventures in developing countries.
So this was a very good discussion topic. So also to link ventures and blue economy, because I believe that is something that we all here in this conference are interested on. So we start to discuss what are the main difficulties on this kind of developing countries that sometimes are the most vulnerable countries that suffer from climate change. So one simple conclusion is that these countries that suffer from climate change, they usually are more open to receive innovations and to test and to have some pilots to verify if the technology can support their problems or their challenges, like in case of droughts, coastal erosion, or fisheries imbalance. So they are open. But something that is very important for ventures when entering in these countries is also to understand and to listen to them, because they are open for innovation. But from another side, they have a totally different reality from what we have, most of us. So we need to go to the field, understand the culture, understand the challenge, and adapt our technologies to their scenarios and to the people that are operating there, because sometimes they don't have all the skills that and do not work with the innovation so much. So we need to go there, train these people, and after investing in these countries, also continuing on supporting the training of the provide skills for these for the people to use the technologies. So that was one part of the discussion. And we also here I also have the note to adapt. So we need to adapt our solutions to that scenarios, and also bring all the actors in this country. So business, also the government, the local government, the workers. We need to engage maximum people as well to foster and to make sure that innovation is implemented. And then some of the challenge that we have identified and we discuss is these countries usually they rely a lot, most of the times, on tourism, and if there is some external event or climate event, they become very vulnerable. So this is a downside from their sides, and this is something that they need to create tools, or there is needs to overpass this challenge that affect tourism and their wealth. And the other part is another challenge that they face is related to agriculture, some limitations due to the dryness, the drought, and pollution. So solutions and technologies that can support these countries to suppress these difficulties are welcome. What else? So these are, I believe that I've touched all the key points that we have discussed. Yeah, I'm checking my notes. Yeah. And there is also, I have also here the note that there is a need also to have a look for fisheries and desalination as well.
Thank you very much, Sara, for you and your group for those insights. And you can see and hear more speakers on our panel for fostering innovation and competitiveness in the blue economy on the playlist. And also you can get more information about AIMOVAR and how to drive more effective innovation at aimovar.com.